The movie opens up with broadcasters around the world announcing that a small percentage of humans have developed supernatural powers. A montage of pictures is shown of these special individuals. They also reveal that these people are referred to as powers. Powers are made to exist in poverty, and most of them have a hard time finding a job. Another important key point that is established by the reporters is that the spinal fluid of powers is used to create a highly addictive substance, known as psych. The substance quickly gained popularity, as people wanted to experience what it was like to feel like a person with supernatural powers. As a consequence, the overdose epidemic created a significant problem for the United States, which struggled to integrate powers into society. In the present time, Connor Reed, a power with electric abilities, wakes his sick mother up. He informs her that she fell asleep with her uniform on once again. He worries that she is overworking herself again. His mother assures him that she is fine and asks him to make her a cup of coffee. When Connor leaves to make his mother breakfast, his mother goes into the bathroom and notices that her condition has gotten worse. A fact that Connor notices as well once he hands her a cup of coffee. He then finds letters that they have received for unpaid payment and begins to worry about making ends meet. Seeing her son distressed, his mother tries to distract him by initiating a silly conversation. She then gives Connor tips to impress his new employer during the job interview he has later that day. Sometime later, Connor sits in an office and fills out a form before his interview. Once he is done, he leaves and makes his way to a construction site. He greets his contractor, Joe, and asks him for a job. Joe tells him that he is an hour late, which is why he no longer has space for him for the day. Feeling desperate, Connor uses his powers and tells Joe that he has a truck full of supplies coming in a few minutes, and he might need his help. Joe finally agrees, and Connor gets straight to work. All of the men working with him have powers, and they use them to make their job easier. While Connor is fixing the wiring, he notices a large drone approaching them. He goes towards the window and finds a police cruiser arriving at the house as well. The officers order all of the workers to come out of the house so that they can be identified. One of the officers approaches Joe and tells him that they have heard complaints about powers being used. Joe denies it, but the officers ask all of the workers to line up so that the drone can scan them and identify them. When the men line up, the officers tell them that anyone who wants to use powers needs to get an official permit. One of the powers responds and tells him that they don't have enough money to do that. However, they are not concerned and signal for the identification process to begin. The drone scans all of the men, but stops at one. A double check reveals that the man is wanted and has a pending warrant against him. Everyone watches helplessly as the officers arrest the worker and escort him towards the cruiser. Just before he is pushed inside the cruiser, the man uses his powers to attack the officers. He then begins running down the street, but the drone deploys guardians, highly dangerous and skilled robots, made specially to deal with powers. The guardians immediately begin shooting and take down the man. The scene then changes to another location, where guardians along with police officers break into a small house. They manage to arrest one man and then move towards a hidden door. They break it down and find several powers extracting their own spinal fluid as a desperate move to make money from the. Later that night, Connor drives down to the supermarket where his mother works to pick her up. He finds her bent over, picking up a broken jar, while her manager reprimands her. He calls the manager out and tells him not to disrespect his mother. This does not sit well with him, and he fires his mother. When they get in the car, the two of them get into an argument. His mother tells him that he shouldn't have come inside to defend her. Then, Connor brings up his mother's worsening condition. He tells her they should get treatment for her cancer. When she tells him that they don't have enough money, he tells her that they can sell their car. Connor's mother ends the argument by telling him to stop acting like his father. The next morning, Connor lines up with other power workers for potential employers showing up. After a few minutes, a truck passes by, and all the workers get up, in hopes that they will be getting a new job for the day. However, the men inside throw a cup of coffee towards the workers and mock them before leaving. Frustrated, all of the workers sit back down and wait for new employers to approach them. Just then, another red van drives by, and Connor's friend tells him to stay away from the people inside, because they are associated with a criminal organization. The van stops in front of Connor, and a man named Garrett calls out to the workers and tells them that he needs a power who knows how to manipulate electricity. When no one responds, Connor decides to volunteer, since he is desperate for money. He tells Garrett that he will take the job, only if he agrees to pay Connor $200 straight up. Garrett agrees and tells Connor to get into the van so that they can get to work. Connor gets into the van, and a man called Freddie hands him a blindfold and gestures for Connor to put it on. Freddie is mute and only communicates through sign language with the group. Sometime later, the group arrives at the location, and Garrett tells Connor that they need to get inside a facility that is protected by an electric fence. Connor inspects the fence, and then uses his power to break it. Then, the group enters the facility, and Garrett asks Connor to start loading up barrels from the facility into the van. As they are loading them up, a security guard shows up and asks Garrett to identify himself. The guard quickly realizes that something is not right, and is about to call for backup when Freddy uses his power to snatch his radio. He then locks the guard inside a dumpster. Once the job is done, Connor tells Garrett that he is leaving, since the job is done, but Garrett stops him and tells him that the job is not done until they deliver the barrels. As soon as they leave, they overhear the authorities deploying drones to search for a red van. Garrett manages to keep the van away from street lights. Then, he stops the van in a tunnel and the whole group begins peeling away the red stickers from the van. When they leave the tunnel, the drone spots them, but lets them go since the van is now white and no longer matches the description of the getaway vehicle. Everyone relaxes once the drone leaves. Garrett drives them into a garage, where he greets a man named Rhino and informs him that the job is done. In a club, Marcus Sutcliffe meets up with the head of trust and tells him that his psych facility was raided, which is why he will not be able to pay him. The man tells Marcus that he only has a week to pay him before his organization decides to get rid of him. Then, Garrett arrives at the club and greets Marcus. Marcus informs Garrett that he does not have enough money to pay him for the job, and that he needs to come up with another plan to make them more money before they are all slaughtered. He tells Garrett to take Connor's help in the next job as well. Garrett agrees, and then leaves to drop Connor back home. He hands him $300 and tells him that he can make much more money if he decides to continue working with him the next day. When Connor goes back home, his mother informs him that she went to the convenience store and asked for her job back, because they need all the financial help that they can get. Seeing his mother going back to work despite her being sick, he decides that he wants to continue working with Garrett and his organization. In the morning, Connor once again joins the other workers and waits for potential employers to drive by. Connor's last employer, Joe, arrives and tells the men that he has a job and needs some workers. Just when Connor is about to volunteer, he notices Garrett and his crew arriving as well. He contemplates joining Joe, but then changes his mind and gets in Garrett's car. Garrett drives them to a cafe where they have breakfast. He then begins questioning Connor and asks him why he has chosen to stick with known criminals rather than picking work that is safe. He tells Garrett that normal jobs are not paying him well. Garrett asks him what he needs the money for, and Connor reveals that his mother is sick and he needs money for her treatment. Finding his reason good enough, Garrett takes Connor outside and tells him that he needs to steal a car for them if he is going to commit bigger crimes for them in 3 days. Before he turns off the alarm, Connor asks Garrett how much he will be getting once they rob the bank. Garrett assures him that he will be paid $25,000. Then, Connor uses his power to deactivate the car's alarm and unlocks the car before getting in with Garrett. They begin driving, and Garrett asks Connor if his mother raised him alone. Connor tells him that his father passed away when he was younger, while he was robbing a bank. Garrett concludes that this was why his mother brought him up without his powers, so that he wouldn't rely on them and end up like his father. Soon, they reach a warehouse, where Garrett begins to train Connor. He gives him a light bulb and asks him to light it up and keep it lit. During his training sessions, Garrett also takes Connor along with him for smaller jobs. He tells him that their city was built by Powers, but then everyone tried to cast them out, because they hated them. With that, the training continues, and Garrett takes Connor from lighting up one bulb to lighting up multiple at the same time. Garrett continues to push Connor to his limits, and assesses the limitations of his powers. Having learned how to control his powers, Connor decides to confront his mother's manager as well. One night, Connor goes home and begins counting money. He checks up on his mother who is in the bathroom, washing her hands, which have gotten worse due to her illness. He lies to his mother and tells her that the job he applied for earlier have called him back. Hearing this, his mother turns around and hugs him, telling him that things will get better for them. He then tells her that once he starts making money, he will take her to a doctor so that she can begin her treatment. Sometime later, Connor goes out of the house to put the trash out when Agent Park, the agent who investigated the facility that Connor had broken into with Garrett, assesses him. He tells his partner that even though Connor does not have a criminal record, he might have decided to indulge in criminal activity to deal with the pending medical bills. Before they leave, Agent Park tells his partner to add Connor's name to the list of suspects that they have established. The next day, Connor and Garrett visit the bank that they have been planning to rob. While Garrett talks to an employee, Connor assesses the bank. Over breakfast, he tells the rest of the crew what he saw. He tells them that there are 2 guards at the entrance of the bank with SMGs, who were watching every move that they made. In addition to the guards, there were cameras in every corner of the room, so you could not escape them. Then, the most important part is the vault. Garrett concludes that the vault has 2-side verification. One is the code and the other is someone off-site, verifying who has got inside the vault. The person who is off-site is controlling the vault door, and even has the power to hit the alarms if they think anything is off. Garrett tells his crew that once the alarm is triggered, it will take the authorities 7 minutes to respond, which is why it is important that they get the job done in 5 minutes. At the same time, Connor's mother informs her manager that she is done with the tasks he has assigned her. She then asks if he needs her to start on the next task, but he begins acting odd and tells her that he does not want any trouble. Meanwhile, Connor and the crew arrive at the bank. Although there are several civilians still inside, Garrett orders everyone to go ahead with the plan. They put their masks on and enter the bank. Connor and Freddie use their powers to take the guards' guns, while Garrett and Maddie get everyone to lie on the ground. Then, Connor uses his power to cause all the lights to malfunction at the bank, including the vault. Garrett grabs an employee and tells her to open the vault. She nervously steps forward and begins trying combinations to open the door, but keeps messing up due to her nervousness. During this time, the alarm at the bank triggers the authorities, and they declare Code 8, before dispatching drones and police towards the bank. Connor calms the girl down and tells her that she needs to enter the right combination so that she can go home at the end of the night. She finally gets the combination right, and the vault door opens up. Garrett tells Connor to start packing up all the money inside, and then asks the girl where the rest of the money. She tells him that the bank moves $500,000 every weekend. Maddie and Freddie tell Garrett that they need to leave the bank because it has been more than 5 minutes. They then use the back door to escape. Just as they are leaving, a drone catches them and is about to deploy Guardians when Garrett tells Connor to use his power to shut down the drone's engine. Connor uses his powers and manages to bring down the drone. Before the drone is brought down, the pilots alert the rest of the authorities. On the police radio, the dispatcher announces that the suspect is a high-level electric. Meanwhile, Garrett and the crew arrive at the club. Garrett confronts Marcus and tells him that he got the timing of the bank wrong, which is why the robbery did not go as planned. He tells a frustrated Marcus that because of his mistake, they now have no money to pay back to the Trust, a criminal organization that uses powers to carry out their crimes. Just then, Connor notices a man in the club signaling some men to create a distraction. The men then mess with the dancers, causing the bouncers to move towards them. With the bouncers distracted, the man pulls out a gun and heads towards Marcus and Garrett. He is about to shoot when Connor uses his powers and causes the gun to fall out of his hands, but not before he shoots at Marcus. The man then turns towards Connor and attacks him. All of a sudden, a man called Rhino takes the gun and fires at the man, taking his life. Garrett tells Marcus that they need to change their location because they can't fight the Trust on their own. However, Marcus gets mad and tells him to back off, since it is not his business. Later that night, Connor finds Nia, a girl that he met with Marcus, in the kitchen. He sits down with her when she grabs his arm and heals him. When Connor learns that she is a healer, he asks her why she hangs around with criminals. She tells him that her situation is complicated, and then leaves when Rhino comes to get her. When Connor gets back home, his mother calls him to his room. He finds his mother sitting at the table with all of the money that he has hidden, laid out in front of her. She asks him where he got the money, and he tells her that he has been working overtime. Suddenly, his mother yells at him and tells him to not lie to her. Finally, Connor confesses that he has been taking illegal jobs so that he can take care of her. She is about to yell at him when the glass in her hand freezes and breaks, and signs of frostbite begin to appear all over her body. Connor manages to catch his mother before she collapses and takes her to the hospital. There, the doctor tells him that her condition has gotten worse, which is why she is not able to control her powers, and they are destroying her. Connor asks the doctor if her condition is treatable, and he tells her that even though the chances of her making a full recovery are slim, her condition can get better if she remains at the hospital. Connor admits his mother to the hospital. Before he leaves, he is told about the cost of her treatment. Outside the hospital, Connor spots Agent Park and his partner approaching him. The two agents take him back to the police station with them for questioning. They tell him that the people he is involved with are dangerous, and he needs to tell them if he was involved in the bank robbery. Connor refuses to give them any solid answers and tells them that he was not involved in the robbery. Then, Agent Park offers him a deal, give them information on Garrett and Marcus, in exchange for immunity. Connor turns down the deal and sticks to his story. Agent Park finally decides to let Connor go. Garrett picks Connor up once again and takes him to meet with Marcus. Marcus grabs Connor and tells him not to blink while he reads his mind. He then confirms that Connor remained loyal to them. Marcus and Garrett then present him with a plan. They tell him that they are going to steal 10 sleeves of psych, which would mean they get $10 million. Connor tells Marcus that in exchange for the $10 million, he wants Nia. Marcus realizes that he wants a healer for his mother and agrees to the deal. Garrett then reveals his own condition and tells him that together they will pay off the Trust and then lead the business as partners. Although hesitant at first, Marcus finally agrees. In the morning, Garrett and Connor gather everyone and tell them that their plan is going down in the middle of Lincoln City and they need to execute the plan quietly so that they don't attract anyone's attention. He then tells them that the truck carrying Psych is going to come down the street, during which they will get Connor close enough so that he can hit the truck and disable the 4 guardians on it. Marcus voices his worries and tells them that Connor will have one chance to hit the truck. Connor assures him that he will not miss, to which Marcus replies that he cannot miss if he wants his mother to get better. He also insists that no one will be harmed during this mission, a condition that everyone agrees to. The next day, everyone begins prepping for the ambush when Connor notices Nia and Marcus having an argument. He confronts Nia and tells her that he only needs her to heal his mother, and then he will let her go. However, she does not seem relieved. In fact, she goes off on Connor and tells him that he is using her, just like everyone else, once they find out what her powers are. Connor leaves her behind as the time to execute the plan begins. Freddy takes a truck on the main street and puts up a construction sign. Garrett gets into another truck and hides in an alley, waiting for the truck to arrive, while Connor hides in another alley. The truck leaves its facility with drones following it. When the truck enters a no-fly zone, Garrett gives everyone the signal to take their position. Freddy takes his position, and just as the truck turns towards him, he signals for the truck driver to turn the other way. The driver informs the authorities about the construction and changes its route. Just as he turns into the other street, Garrett reverses his truck, making it look like a driver merely making his way out of a building. He then pretends to have a hard time getting his truck out of the way. Then, he gets out of the truck with his hands up in the air, while giving Connor the signal to disable the truck. Connor uses his power to cause the truck to malfunction. When the guards come out of the truck and prepare to shoot, Garrett uses his power to hold them off. He yells for Connor to get up and finish his job. Just then, the drone defies orders and flies into the no-fly zone, and deploys the Guardians. Immediately, Connor gets up and uses his power to take the Guardians down. This alerts the dispatcher, and she alerts the rest of the authorities, who deploy another drone. Meanwhile, Maddie uses her powers to make sure that the Guardians are down. Then, she moves towards the armored truck and starts to burn a hole into the truck. Freddy throws a smoke bomb inside, and when the guards start choking on the smoke, they open the doors and get out. Each of the guards has a case handcuffed to their hands. Maddie melts the handcuffs and takes the cases from them. She hands them to Rhino. All of a sudden, all the guards that they had gathered and lined up, one of Marcus's men fires at them in cold blood. This catches everyone off guard, since they had agreed to not shoot anyone. During this chaos, Garrett notices Rhino pulling out his gun and screams at Maddie to get out of his way, but he is too late and Rhino fires at Maddie. He then shoots at Freddy, but Garrett manages to use his power and barely moves him out of his way. Just then, the drone arrives at the street and deploys the Guardian. The Guardians begin shooting at Marcus's men and take their lives. Finding their chance, Connor, Freddy, and Garrett manage to take their car and escape the site. Garrett notices that Freddy has been shot, but he and Connor are unable to save him, and he passes away in Garrett's arms. Rhino, who managed to escape with the cases, reaches the club and hands Marcus the cases containing Psyche. He hands Nia a vial and tells her that her father still owes him a lot of money. Meanwhile, Garrett and Connor arrive at an underground parking lot. Connor blames Garrett for everything that went wrong. He tells him that Marcus only double-crossed them because he asked him for his cut. He then leaves the parking lot and visits his mother. Back at the station, the police chief asks Agent Park why he didn't keep Connor in their custody. He tells the chief that Connor is not a murderer and is merely being used as a pawn. Agent Park leaves the station and arrives at his ex-wife's house to pick their daughter up. His wife tells him that their daughter's powers went out of control during school hours and that she is scared. When his daughter arrives at the door, she asks him if they are going to give her up, since she had heard on the TV that parents give their children up if they have powers. He is about to reply when a friend of Connor's interrupts them and hands him a piece of paper. The paper contains a message from Connor asking to meet him at a cafe. That night, Agent Park heads to the cafe, where he finds Connor waiting for him. Connor tells him that he can give him Marcus's location, but if that is not good enough for him, then he needs to get rid of Connor because he cannot watch his mother's health slowly deteriorate. In the morning, Agent Park and the police chief start an operation to take down Marcus. At the same time, in the club, Nia notices pictures of the slaughtered police officers on the TV. Just then, Marcus starts coughing and asks Nia to heal him. She hesitates, but when Marcus holds a gun to her head, she complies. She begins healing him and starts coughing violently. Suddenly, the police arrive at the club and start taking the men down. Marcus, Rhino, and Nia manage to escape. However, before they can leave through the garage, Garrett catches up to them and fires at Marcus, injuring him. He then fires at Rhino, but the bullets don't harm him. He uses his power to slow Rhino, and then calls Connor to use his power and disable Rhino. Although Connor uses his power to attack Rhino, he still puts up a good fight. However, the two of them attack him together and take him down. Then, Garrett moves towards Marcus and takes his life. He tells Connor to take Nia to his mother, so that she can heal her. Nia tells Connor that healing his mother could be the end of her, but he does not listen, and still takes her to the hospital. He pulls out his gun and threatens Nia to save his mother. She begins crying, but still begins healing her. Connor watches her heal his mother, but when he notices signs of her illness appearing on Nia, he asks her to stop. Not long after, she passes away. Meanwhile, at the club, Agent Park finds Marcus deceased and manages to confiscate the cases containing Psyche. With the mission over, Connor gives Nia his car and apologizes before leaving. When she asks him where he is going, he tells her that he has to make things right. With one of the biggest criminals out of the picture, Agent Park and his partner are given medals for their good work. The police push for stricter laws regarding the powers, while the public protests in favor of them and asks for better laws for the powers. Garrett, who had taken one case of Peace Guy with him, meets up with the leader of the criminal organization, Trust. On the other hand, Nia goes to visit her father at the prison. The movie ends with Connor visiting his mother's grave and asking her to continue looking after him and protecting him.